Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Andreea Cojocaru. Where are you right now, Andreea?
Germany.
Excellent. And I'm in New York City. And our talk originally was going to be taking place across New York City and Paris using the platform Spatial. We wanted to talk about multi-user collaboration. And so, less so than most of the talks scheduled for the RealTime Conference, I feel that we're very fortunate that our talk is still pretty close to what it was going to be, except now we're just doing it from, my New York City home and her Germany home. How are you today, Andreea?
Great, great. And I'm glad to be here with you. And we're going to jump and be together in several VR spaces as well. So this is also a little experiment on many fronts, not only with the real-time conference and online talks with live Q&A in this new format, but also with the whole VR collaboration tool. So in a way, it's a proof of concept that we were forced to do.
And I feel like that's part of what architecture training prepares you for, is you kind of roll with the punches and adapt and just figure things out. So this is just another day at the office for us.
Absolutely. Especially in this industry, especially at this intersection of VR and architecture where there is so much to be figured out.
I feel like you and I have had a number of conversations in the past about when is VR useful, especially for design and architecture, when is it not, when does it make sense to try to get people into the same experience together. So this talk really grew out of those discussions and us wanting to kind of go through a bit of an overview of the different platforms out there, when they make sense as a turnkey solution, and then also because both your company and my company design custom VR and AR experiences, when does it make sense for something to be a little bit more targeted? Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And we hope this presentation will be helpful for people who are trying to understand more about that border and what kind of decision needs to be made in terms of, do I need a custom tool that I can just buy a monthly subscription for, or do I need to hire someone that will develop something that's more interactive, more polished, and more custom to exactly what I need to be doing in VR.
Absolutely, because I think we've both seen there's a lot of misconceptions about either VR as a panacea that will solve all problems, which of course is not true, or that it's just a gimmick and it can never actually be useful as part of the design process. And I believe we are very squarely in the middle, that it is excellent sometimes and it is not the right tool for other times. So I hope in today's presentation we can clear a few things up.
Yes, definitely. And this is something that I discuss with a lot of people. This industry is so new, and there are many paradoxes in the discussions going on right now. And one of these paradoxes, what you just mentioned, we tend to tell people everything is possible in VR. We are guilty of that. We say we can program everything. You can do anything you want, anything just like in real life. You can walk, you can run. Hey, you can even do crazy things like you can fly. And that is 100% true. But there is another reality behind that, which is the development time that it takes to actually get to that accuracy. So when people actually do jump into a VR experience and they do try to grab everything and do everything exactly like in real life, in some cases they experience a moment of slight disappointment because the application, of course, did not have everything already programmed exactly like in real life. So there's an adjustment time where you have to figure out what can you grab, where can you go, where can you fly, because it's not at this stage really anywhere. So we are trying to walk people through that process and make them understand the technology better, in the sense that they should be excited about it and the possibilities, and even about what we already have now and what they can already experience and purchase, but also aware that there is a curve that's going to happen in terms of usability and in terms of individual people getting into this new medium and hold on to the excitement while still going through sometimes several hours of days of getting used to things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people seem to think that when you go into these programs that you need to see everything, that the whole world needs to be built out and everything needs to be interactive and it should have that level of freedom. But I don't know about you, but for me, the most successful VR experiences, both that I've experienced myself or created for clients, have been the ones that have been much more targeted, or they're very simple and maybe they're not photorealistic at all. Maybe they're more sketchy or diagrammatic, and they are still leaving a lot up to the imagination. There's still room to get excited about the potential of what this design could become, instead of having everything prescribed in front of you the way that Revit is trying to tell you, this is going to be a 6-inch wall, that's concrete here and brick here, and this is a door. VR has the potential to be much more free in terms of what your imagination can do, instead of just allowing you to interact and do anything you might want in the experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're talking about the notion of UX, user experience in VR. And we have been talking about UX in terms of designs of apps and websites and all of that for quite a while now. And people tend to use the same terminology when talking about VR. But actually, the UX that you need to, the strategy that you need to develop to guide a person along the use of a phone app is very, very different than the type of knowledge and strategy you need to develop to make sure that a person understands what they're supposed to do inside VR, inside an interactive three-dimensional space where technically everything is possible. Everything could be a button. Everything could be something you could touch and throw away, but most often it's not. So when you mention very simple applications that are actually very successful, although they do not allow you to do everything, that to me is an example of an amazingly deep understanding of user experience inside a three-dimensional space.
Yeah. I think we've done a wonderful job setting up this presentation. So I'd say the goal of what everyone is about to see is going to be to give you a sense of, when is a Zoom meeting like this? When is that the best way to have a discussion and communicate ideas? Then when does it make sense to go into a turnkey solution like the Wild, which allows you to understand your projects at scale in a very robust way and bring in all sorts of content and move things around. And then looking at Spatial, which I find is a really lovely free-form kind of discussion tool that allows you to really feel like you're engaging with the other person who's there. And that allows you to just drop content into your browser and have it appear right in front of you. And then along the way, we'll also be discussing a little bit what it's like to have more customized, targeted experiences, such as the goals that we've been bringing up in this introduction.
Yep. And I'm excited to see people's reactions. And I hope we'll be getting some questions after this presentation. I hope some people will be intrigued. And I even welcome people that are maybe more confused because we've shown them a side of VR that they were not familiar with before and that they want to know more about.
Yeah. So without further ado, bye for now, Andrea. I will see you in the wild.
See you in VR. Should we tell people who we are?
I'm going to try to introduce us in the. Yeah, we should, though. We should. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the RealTime Conference virtual edition. My name is Alex Coulombe. I'm the curator of the architecture track, and I run a studio in New York City called Agile that has been primarily focused over the past 7 years on creating customized virtual reality and augmented reality experiences, primarily for the architecture world as a whole. But lately, we've also been getting more and more into creating custom live events that take place across virtual reality. And you'll hear more about that later in this presentation. And I'm joined today to talk about multi-user collaboration in VR and its particular use cases by Andreea Cojocaru, coming to us all the way from Germany. Welcome.
Hi, Alex. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and talk about my favorite topics, VR and architecture. I am an architect and a software developer, and I'm the co-founder of Numena. We are an interdisciplinary studio in the south of Germany. And what is special about us is that we are architects who code. So our teams are not made of architects that work together with programmers. We're kind of like two in one. And we do custom virtual reality applications for a lot of different fields. We do marketing. We also do a lot of simulators for the healthcare industry. And we also design and build real buildings because we do not want to give up the architecture part of our soul. It's a very experimental approach to what it means to run a studio, whether it's architecture, whether it's software development. But we deeply believe that this is the future, that more and more people will have to combine whatever they were educated in with a pretty deep knowledge of software development.
I admire that immensely. I am a former architect who went from working in traditional architecture firms to an architecture consultancy, and now I am very much only involved in using VR to help create the final buildings. But I am not a direct architect anymore, and I miss that sometimes. So I admire a lot about what you and your studio are doing.
Thank you. We are. It's been a challenge. It's not an easy road. We're aware of that. We deeply believe, however, that designing and experiences real spaces that we've designed is what makes us very good at designing virtual spaces, and the other way around. We also believe that in time, our experience and fluency with virtual architecture will start to twist and turn in interesting ways the way we design real buildings. How exactly, what shape that's going to take, I can't tell you yet. I think it's going to take maybe another 10, 15 years, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, and virtual architecture is so exciting, of course, because you aren't bound by all the same laws that dictate real architecture, but there are other constraints. You do have to be more conscious of things like what's your, polygon count and things of that nature. But there is a lot more room to tailor what the experience is going to be like, even in terms of what you make interactive and what you don't, or if the daylight is behaving in a realistic way. You can have two suns if you want, and it can all be in service of the aesthetic, the experience, the phenomenological experience, and just the function of being able to accomplish certain tasks in an enhanced way by having the virtual architecture provide affordances for that.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that you mentioned two suns. A lot of developers in VR right now, they are very interested in creating virtual environments that mimic real environments in terms of shadows and realism and all of that, and that's fantastic. We, however, always have way more interest in experimenting with things like atypical shadows and two or three suns and light that comes from impossible directions in reality, because we feel like, hey, we got the real stuff on the real building we're just working on. So now in the virtual space, let's just break all those rules that frustrated us with the real building that we could not escape. So what we're doing, this combination of virtual and real architecture, it does seem a little bit paradoxical, but in the daily workflow, it actually makes sense. So we would be spending 2 3 weeks struggling to make the structure and the engineering part fit into our design. And then we experience switching to a virtual project and a virtual architecture environment as like a big joy and a big release that we don't have to deal with a structural engineer anymore. But of course, after a while, you kind of want to go back because you are also an architect.
Very exciting. Well, I hope that our shared experiences, as well as where we specialize in some slightly different areas, will be useful to the audience today as we start to explore various existing solutions for collaborating in VR and AR, as well as when it makes sense to do something more custom and targeted, such as the experiences that you and I build for our clients.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I think we'll be able to cut together something across all that will make sense.